There we go. For those of you who haven't attended the webinar before, my name is Neville Rudd. I'm Operations Director here at Caspian, also instructional designer, tester, and a number of other things. We're very multifunctional here at Caspian. This afternoon's webinar, which will last approximately an hour, is about developing mobile simulations using VBSWorlds. Only 4 slides, and this is the first one of them, so only 3 more to go, so we won't bore you with PowerPoint too much. The webinar, I'm just going to go a couple of slides on the background to mobile and the sorts of things we've been doing in the past, and some of the simulations that we built for PC that we have turned into mobile applications, and some of the current activities, a specific current activity in fact, the sorts of things we're now doing with mobile apps. Once that's done, I'm going to play and review a sim that I built earlier today, and this will be the sim that we will build during the webinar. So it's a very simple sort of sim, but it's sort of based and it's based around our own current activities. So we're going to build a sim for mobile during the webinar, and then we'll go through the publishing options within VBSWorlds for mobile technology, and we'll go into those in a little bit of depth. So some of you have seen the screens, I'm sure, but I'm going to explain some of the options there and how, what they are and when you might use them. We will then publish the sim we built this afternoon to an Android tablet, and I will turn the webcam on, so don't be frightened when you see me, and show you the sim we built running on an Android tablet. And that will be the end of the main part of the webinar. I'll then just go a few bullet points of what's new in VBSWorlds 1.4. VBSWorlds 1.4 is currently in very final stages of testing. We are hoping to release this either on Friday this week or Monday or Tuesday of next week. Certainly it will be ready by the middle of next week, and there are quite a nice new features in there, one of which I'll show you today on the mobile options. Hopefully it'll whet your appetite for that. And then finally there will be a Q&A, probably by the chat window or the Q&A questions window in the webinar. Okay. Question? Okay. What have we done on mobile in the last few months here at Caspian ourselves? So there's a bunch of sims that we've converted to mobile on request for sort of piloting by our own customers. So some of these have been as part of a development, some have been post-development of the sim. So we are currently working on a multiplayer simulation for NATO called Borders Ahoy, which is about maritime interdiction operations. We've built a C-130 evacuation simulation with MTS for the US Army. We have a comparatively old sim for us, the MWS cadet induction on the Type 23 destroyer, which we've converted to mobile for the UK Royal Navy for them to pilot. A couple of sims we're working with in conjunction with line communications. First is a vehicle joint recognition trainer, and the second is a general purpose machine gun trainer. And in fact, what we're going to build this afternoon is a very, very simple variant of that machine gun trainer. So we're going to just take a few of the bits in that and show you how to build a mobile sim. So that's one we'll be working on today. Also for Fiat on the more commercial side, we built a sim from last year, fault finding all their production lines, and we've turned that into an iPad app for them, so they can actually use that widely in the factory over in Turin. And lastly, for Great Ormond Street Hospital over here in the UK, who are world leaders in child medicine. We built a sim for them last year for the training of use of mechanical hoists, and we've turned that into a mobile app. So those are the sorts of things we've been doing here at Caspian in the past 12 to 18 months. What we're working on at the moment is what we're calling a virtual armory. This is 10 virtual task simulations, so it allows learners to interact with weapons and devices. The screenshot you can see here is actually for a night sight for a rifle. They can click on the parts to get knowledge. They can disassemble and assemble, so you can click on it, breaks the parts. You see that here, and we'll see that operating this afternoon. They can use them to follow the process of maintenance, the process of using the weapon or the device when they're as part of their jobs, and how do they apply it in operation. And then we can, using the standard VBS scoring system and the variable system, we can test knowledge and process application. We can then provide feedback and scoring. Now, all of these apps will be built for iOS and Android, and also web deployed, so they can come out of an LMS if the customer so desires. So it's going to be a set with a common theme, and so currently we're building 10 of these virtual task simulations. So that's the end of the PowerPoint. I'm going to click there, press escape and make that thing disappear. And VBSWorlds is on the thing behind me. I'm just going to check see if there are any questions at this stage. No, there isn't. That's good news. So this is the simulation we're going to build. This is how I've built it, and it's actually going to be a gun. So if I just click on publish, there's a missing texture I know on one of my bottles, so excuse the yellow warning message that's about to come up. So what we're going to build is a mobile app which will deploy onto an Android tablet. It's going to have a front screen, the start button. It's going to have some text, actually be a bit, that's only 12-point text, we can make it 14-point text, some text, some information, we're just pasting. We're not going to spend time in the webinar typing this in. We're then going to have the weapon itself. Now, a new feature of VBSWorlds 1.4 is what we call the orbit camera, and this allows me to, within the sim, to zoom in, zoom out, and then I'm actually in the standalone version, I'm holding my right mouse button, and that actually moves. You can move, and you pick an object and you move the orbit around the object. So this, when it works on the tablet, you'll see on the tablet you use your fingers, and so you'll use your fingers to up and down, left and right to move the image about, and then you'll pinch with your fingers to zoom in and zoom out. So it's the sort of our first foray into sort of true mobile functionality. What we'll then do is, so this gun is made up of a few pieces. It's also got a cover, so we'll show the cover going up and the weapon round coming out and then hiding. So this is the being able to explode into different parts and put it back again. Our VTSs will be much more complex than this, but this will give you a flavour of what's possible. And then we'll be able to bring an information panel up and hide the information panel, and then we can quit if we want to. Okay. So that, in essence, is the sim we're going to build this afternoon. Very, very simple, but there's enough there hopefully to get you interested in the mobile side. So what we're going to do, I've actually got a question there. Somebody's asked, is the webinar going to be available as a recording, as I must unfortunately pop in and out? Yes, or it is definitely going to be it is recording as we speak, so it is currently recording. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll build a create new sim, and we will call this one, let's call this one rifle demo, and it's only going to have one scene. We'll call that main scene. Now in the 3D environment we've actually built sort of the inside of a ball to put for this particular sim, and so all our BTS is going to use the inside, so just make a common background. So this is what this one's going to be, and we built it for the M240 rifle. And we're going to use the first-person camera, because actually we're only going to use the orbit camera, not the ordinary VBSWorlds camera, so it doesn't really matter what we use, but we'll use the first person. And I click finish, and it will build. Now there is my 3D world. There we go, with my player start point. Now I only need my player start point for one purpose, which is to orient the gun when I first start adding it, and then we can make the player start point disappear. So what I'm going to do first is add the 3D and marker elements to the world, and then I'll add the 2D that surrounds it. So, and there's some sort of key points about mobile sim building as we go across. The first thing I'm going to do is add the gun itself. Now the gun we were provided with from a partner of ours, but because mobile needs to be a comparatively light footprint, the gun was very high quality, so we've broken the gun into 3 pieces to keep the poly count down and to maximize the performance of the mobile sim. It's something you might want to keep in mind when you're building sims. It might be better to break things apart and having one big model. So I'm going to add in my gun, and we've called it M40B Centered 1, Centered 2 and Centered 3. It's just the name Ian Hampden and Arthur gave them. So the first one I'm going to put in, and I'll just call this one G1 for gun, or gun 1, and put it in that. So first thing I'm going to do is just add it anywhere to the world. I'm just going to drop it in. It's actually quite small, you won't be able to see it. The next thing I'm going to do, because I want it to be in the center of the world, I'm going to match entity transformations and put it dead in the middle, which is where the player start point. So I don't have to think about parameters. So it's there in the middle. And lastly, when we were provided with it, we found it was a bit small for our purposes, so we're actually going to double it in size. So I'm going to use the scale parameter at the bottom here to make it 2. I'm just going to grab the player start point and move it out of the way. And zoom in slightly. There we go. So there's a part of a gun with its some weapons around there. So what I'm going to do now is clone that piece for centered 2. Automatically I'll call it gun 2. And there's a third part of it. Clone selected. Gun 3. So I have 3 parts of my weapon, my M40, and there it is. The next thing I'm going to do is clone again, because they've all got the same sort of parameters, from the gun for my weapons round, which is down here, down there. Call this the round. And that's actually popped inside there. You can't see it at the moment, it's actually popped inside the breech there. And the last thing I'm going to do is the cover. There's a cover which we're going to move up and down and sort of flip up and down. So clone this, and we're going to find the cover. And call that the cover. Now the cover, because its point of orientation is different to the gun, will need a little bit of tweaking for its parameters. So I'll just drop that in. And I do know that we need to make it there, and we need to move it up a bit, and I need to move it slightly this way. Okay, so you have the cover there now, and if I actually move it, you'll move it. So what I want to do is tilt it on this axis, and then back again to open and close it. Just put that back there. So the next thing I'm going to do is put 4 markers in the world, 2 for the cover and 2 for the weapons round, and then we can move the cover and the weapon round to and from their respective markers. So the first thing I'm going to do is put cover mark closed, and I'll drop that into the world. And again, I'll just match its entity transformations to the cover. So that's the position it will go to when it's closed. And I'm going to clone that to make cover mark open. And I'm going to twist that by 90 degrees. So it actually looks upside down, but that's the orientation of the image for the marker. But that is what I need to do. I need it to go up and down by 90 degrees. I will clone the original one, or drop one in, which will be the round mark. It says it will keep the closed, or it's its starting position, and I will match that to the weapon round, and then I will clone that and to make it open. Actually, it's going to move it up into the air, and what I will do is move that up there, but I'll actually increase the scale to 5, so actually when the weapon round comes out it will increase in size, which aids the visibility in the mobile app. So they'll see the round coming up, but it will come up in size, so that when they zoom in on it, it's a much better view. So essentially those are my 3D assets, and they're all in there, so I've got the markers, and at this stage that's all I need. Somebody's asked a question here, so I'm going to... sorry, I didn't hear. In what programs have you created the 3D object for the rifles? Who asked that? Demeter, I think Demeter. The models are created in 3D Studio Max. So we either build them from scratch ourselves, or we receive them from external sources. So, for example, we're working with Line Communication, and Line build parts for simulations using 3D Studio Max. Or we can buy, we've bought certainly a lot of military objects from a site called Turbo Squids, which you bring them in and just change the textures of them. But all of the objects and our environments are built in 3D Studio Max. What I'm now going to do is add the two opening panels and the side panel that we saw in the simulation. So the first of these is add front screen 1. I'll just call that front 1, and that's going to be what we call a custom interaction. What I want to do is change the background. So this is going to have a background, some text and a button. So I want to change that background to this blank screen down here, and I want to orient it in the top left of the screen. I'm going to change my button so it is this grey thing there. When you're building buttons for mobile apps, they need to be of a reasonable size. Our first ever app we produced for mobile looked fantastic on the PC, but the buttons were so small that you almost needed a matchstick to poke them to get them going. So make your buttons a decent size. This one's, I believe, 64 pixels by 128. That's about the sort of smallest you want to go for any mobile app. Text box, we put a text box in just with a title in, so we'll say give that a make it bold and 36, and we'll call this the M240 training sim. Okay, and then we'll put a text box for the start button, which will say start, and we'll make that centered and 14-point bold, I think. 16.1 is 14-point bold, and just drop that over the button. So it's a very simple opening screen and start button. So what we're going to do is close that, clone it to make the second panel. I'm going to change the legend on here. I'll call this one begin or continue, and I'll remove that text box. We wanted some text about the rifle itself, and what I'm going to do is just give it a bit of space by bringing these two down. Text there. My text is going to be 14 point because I noticed it was a bit small in the other sim. And what I'm going to do, rather than write the text, I have the text here in WordPad, TextPad, Notepad. Now what you notice, it is in actually 3 paragraphs, but if I pasted that in right now, the end of line and the blank line there will be treated as white space by VBSWorlds, and it wouldn't put the paragraph markers in. So we do a bit of an old-fashioned programmatic trick. We use /n for a carriage return. So we enter /n and /n, and that will give 2 carriage returns, so one line and then a blank line. And I'll bring that up there. That there. Notepad's being a bit. Thank you. /n. Just tidy this up. Should that'll do. And just copy all of that, dismiss that, and drop it in. So in the interaction itself, it's one line, but you can see the /n there and the /n's there. They will put the carriage returns in, and then that will format it nicely. So those are my 2 opening. And the last thing I need is the side panel. The side panel, that is a custom HUD. I'm not going to build it now. I actually have already built it. We'll just use the one. I'll just go through and explain it. There we And so this was made up of a side panel, 4 buttons, one to show and another to hide, so that will open up the gun and the cover and show the round and hide it. The information button will show this information panel, and there's a little button there to close it, the information panel, and then there's a quit button. 2 things to note here, and I don't know those of you who are seasoned at VBSWorlds use it if you use the grouping mechanism HUDs, but to be able to hide and show this specifications and the button, they have been they're added to a group called info panel. You can create as many groups as you like, which means we just need one command to hide and show everything in the group. We don't have to hide and show individual items, which is quite useful. So we have our 2D, we have our 3D, we're now ready to bolt it all together on the logic canvas and make it work. Now the sim itself is made up, apart from including the scene start and scene end nodes, there are only 17 nodes in the whole simulation. No need for groups and no need for separate scenes. In this we'll put it all together on one canvas. Excuse me. So our VBSWorlds logic canvas, I'm just going to check if there's any questions. No, that's good, thank you. So the first thing we're going to do is put in a interaction control node to show panel 1, and we'll link it to any of the objects in the world to trigger it, and it's going to be front panel 1. And I'll clone that, and we'll want to show front panel 2. So that's our 2 panels. As soon as we've clicked on the second panel, we want to show the inside of the frame and the gun. We now have a camera select, and our camera select node now has a new default camera. The old first and third person there was a new one called orbit camera, and that will orbit, so I select that, it's saying which object you want to orbit around, and it can be any object in the world. So I can, I'm actually going to do gun 1, which is the central one. I could do something else, but it will, and there are times when you want to change from one orbit to another. But let's start with, and for the bulk of this, I'm actually going to orbit around the gun. You could also orbit around a marker, and that could have interesting options for your mobile sim. The other thing is, the orbit itself has a range of parameters, and we actually can save them a bit like HUDs and other options. So if I go default orbit camera, I can have configurations. So if I select VTT1, these are the things you can set on your orbit camera. I'm not going to go into all of them at length, but you can have things like starting your angle, starting pitch angles, starting roll angle, the speed which it turns. So you can, lots of parameters. You can change the user experience when they use their fingers to pinch in and pinch out and move around the camera. What I'm going to do, I'll leave these as is and come back and change them if I want any. But an interesting one is the start distance. How far away from or close to the object when you start. So that is one that when we've been using this and when we've been testing and developing it, that's probably the most useful one. So the orbit camera selected is going to put it gun 1. I'm using this particular config. The next thing I want to do is show my HUD, my side panel. So I'll just drop that in there. But initially, I don't want to show the information panel or the information panel closer. So I'm going to hide a group, and the group I'm going to hide is the info panel group. Now at this point in time, that should be completely playable. So let's just test to make sure we can play that. Okay, so panel 1, panel 2, not very centered, apologize for that, but now I can move in and out, zoom in, zoom out, and have a look. So nothing else is there at the moment, but I've got my HUD there, my buttons, I've got my gun, I've got the pieces in the right place, the covers in the right place. So the next thing I'm going to do is test to see when I press the show and hide what's going to happen there. So I'll pull that off the side here, clone that. So I've got two buttons, so I'm going to do a test button, and I'm going to test show, and I want another one, I want to test the hide button. So I'll wire those up. When I press show, excuse me, I'm going to use manipulate entity nodes to open the cover. So I want to take the cover and I want to move it to the cover open mark, and I'll set 2 seconds. Should really use a variable rather than numbers, but it doesn't look too bad, so I'll use numbers at the moment. And we'll clone that, and we also want to move the round to the round open mark. Similarly, we want to move, where we hit the hide button, we want to put them back again. So the cover goes to its closed mark and the round goes to its closed mark. Now, moving along here, if I show the information panel, so again we're going to do a test button, and it's going to be information. We're going to show the information group, and which is the panel and the button. So I want to show group, and the group I want to show is the info panel. And finally, if I click the close button, which is the panel I've called panel close, I'll just drop that. I want it to hide the group, so I don't need another node for that. I've already got one. So, and lastly, if I just move this along here, if I click the quick button, so I'm going to test the quick button. I want to end the simulation entirely. So if I drop my scene end in, because there's no second or subsequent scene, it will quit the application. So just go back over those, have the scene start, show the first two front screens, and then switch to the orbit camera. Once the orbit camera is selected, which will be instant, we're going to show that HUD, and that will show the side panel and the buttons on the side. I'm then going to test, there are the main buttons, and that's the show and the hide. If I click show, it will move the cover and the round to the open markers, and when I click hide, it will move the cover and the round back to their close. Now, what I would normally do is actually set variables in there to show whether they're open, and when I'm clicking, I'd only attempt to hide them if they are already shown, and I'd only attempt to show them if I knew they were hidden. So it actually maintain a state of open and closed on these items, and that would stop any attempt to move them if they didn't need to be moved, but we won't do that this afternoon. The information, so the information is made up of a group, which is the information panel and the information panel close. So we're going to show group, and if we, once that's shown, if we click on the panel close button, we will hide that group, and finally the test button will quit. So that's a simulation in 17 nodes, a bit like a hacky, isn't it? 17 syllables. Publish that. Get rid of my missing texture, I need to find that. So panel 1, panel 2, you'll notice there's a bit of a flick there. I would really normally do something with one of the default cameras and point it at a bit of black, so while the front panel's loading we don't see a flickering, but I'll leave you to do that when you build mobile sims. Start. You see where the /n/ns have put my carriage returns in, so I'll get nicely formatted text. I don't have to think about the size of text boxes and put them in the individual text boxes. Click again, in and out. I'll just move this down now. So if I show, the weapon round goes up, there it is there, and the cover goes up, and I can hide, and they will go back in again. up, and even with those open, we can move around and bring the information panel up. And what the Orbit camera allows me to do, unlike normal interactions, which you can't move around in when they're on, so the Orbit camera allows me to move around, zoom in, zoom out, and do things with the information panel there. So that is a very simple weapons training simulation. And what we're going to do now, I'll just check to see if you have any questions. I'm going to move on. Okay, I'm just going to come back. Kurt, if you turn off word wrap in Notepad, protocol protects you from manipulations. Thank you, Kurt. Yes, I should have turned that on before we started, but that's useful to know. I've been caught by that too many times as well. So let's look at the publishing options. I've got a folder here somewhere. Let's have a look. Webinars export. So the webinars exports. This is where the webinars export is where I'm going to put the file. So I'll bring this panel back on in a minute. You see it? Bring it back. Now the mobile. When you click publish, now sorry, I'll stop that. The publish option, or export journey as we call it, is this little world here. You have a number of options. I'm not going to cover standalone or the Shockwave or Java, but you have iPad, iPhone, a single one for iPad, iPhone, and Android. We're going to concentrate on Android for a specific reason, which I'll come on to, but I'll go on to iPad, iPhone there. Now, all of the mobile publishing and exporting options have a sort of flavour and theme, one of which is, so the first one is common to all of them, when you're not in, this is a training sim, so we actually haven't got first or third person camera on. When you have a sim that uses first or third person and your learners are moving through the 3D environment, they can either move using a virtual D-pad which appears in the bottom left of the screen. It's a thumb pad. They can move forward, back, run, and turn left and turn right. Or you can use the accelerometer where you physically manipulate the mobile device and to move them. Most of our customers seem to prefer the D-pad, the accelerometer in the 3D one. It takes a bit of getting used to, certainly if you're my age. The youngsters are much better at it. So you can turn this on and off. For this particular simulation, we'll turn it to accelerometer because we don't want to visualize the D-pad. So that's that. You also have a performance and quality setting on your textures. So converting the textures, the internal VBSWorlds textures, to the correct format for your device does take time, certainly for iPad especially, when we go to PVR format. So when you're testing, we advise going to performance, which means the graphics are of lower quality, but it's faster to publish and export. Once you've tested your sim and you're ready to deploy, you can go to quality. This will give you a greater quality of image, but will take longer to export. The key thing to remember is once you've done one export, it won't re-export unless you force it to overwrite. So forcing it to overwrite will change your bag or lower quality to higher quality. Now for iPad and iPhone, there are limited deployment options. Effectively, you have to build your VBS apps and deploy them in what we call a launcher. So there's a launcher, a selection program, which is on the iPad. But you need to get it onto the iPad via iTunes, and creating them, we, Caspian, are not able to create a launcher for you because that breaks the terms and conditions of our Apple developer license. What we do is we ship all the developer code required for you to build your own launcher application. It's outside the scope of this webinar to go much more in depth than that, but if you do want to create specifically iOS apps, get in touch with us, and if we get sufficient interest, we would really enjoy running a webinar. It wouldn't be me, it would be one of our development team, to take you through the process of creating your own launcher for iOS, and we would enjoy the opportunity to do that, so get in touch. And for iOS, we will leave it there for today. We're going to concentrate on Android because although there are more options, it gives you far more flexibility of getting your finished app onto your device. Now, there are four. There's what we call standalone, launcher, launcher web download and standalone web download. And I'm going to do these in an odd order, but you'll understand why. The simplest one and the most common one internally we use here at Caspian is the launcher version. Now, what a launcher, as I say, is a little app that sits on the device into which you can put multiple VBSWorlds simulations and applications. So on this particular option is where the launcher for VBSWorlds is freely available for all of you on Google Play. So you can go to Google Play now, search for VBSWorlds, download the launcher for your device. So because there's no terms and conditions as there with Apple, we can distribute that. Once you've got the launcher on your device, you would create your launcher version here and simply use Windows Explorer to drag it from your PC to your device. That's what we're going to be doing in a little while with our own application, which you can see. We're going to come back and actually do this one. So again, you have the accelerometer and the virtual D-pad. We'll pick accelerometer. We've got quality and performance. We'll probably go for here actually I'm actually going to use an AS tablet which uses DDS format, which is the same as a VBSWorlds, so there's no conversion, so it's quite quick. There are 4 texture formats for Android: ETC, PVR, ATC and DDS. If you're unsure of what your tablet is, if you hover over, we will show you the most common manufacturers and what their format is. If in doubt, please get in touch with us directly, myself directly, or via VBSWorlds support, and we'll let you know. So when we deploy in a little while, we're going to use this option and probably have a quality up there, and we're going through this. So that's the deployment option for the standard Android launcher. The next one I'm going to do is launcher web download. Now you'll notice here that what's actually happened is it's much the same, but rather than your options here, you've actually got you put in a URL. Now the reason so what you will do here, so the use case here is when you have built an app, your client base or your internal customers, external customers have your launcher, but they are not co-located, so they're remotely located. So you want to distribute apps to people that aren't in the same building or the same organization. This is a good way to do it. What will happen, and I'm going to open up a folder and show you, when you choose this, you'll put in a URL. So for example, if I was putting it in on Thinking Worlds, I put www.spells.com//. It has to be a valid URL, so it needs to enter the slash. If I don't do that, I'll get this warning down there. When I click publish, I'm going to show you what happens. I'm just going to, I did publish one earlier. Here's one I built earlier. So I'm going to bring this back. Webinars, mobile sims, launching web files. What you'll get is a single file with the name of the application. I've called mine rifle demo, so it would have said rifle demo, and then .pack location. That file is added to, and it can be downloaded from Google Play, but added to your launcher. In here is the hosted pack files. This folder will go at the URL we put into. Come back. Here. So the URL here will contain these files. There is one data file for each of the 4 texture formats and an XML file. If I open that notepad, there's the XML file. This has a timestamp, which is quite important, and what the type is, so DDS, PVR, ATC, and the name and the URL of that application. So what happens is, I'm just going to bring this to one side and go down a level. When your end user launches this particular application from the launcher, it goes online to the URL, finds the config file, interrogates the device because it will know which of these to download, and download the correct pack file for the device. So it allows you to do sort of one deployment to multiple devices. The other thing it does, it checks the file stamp. And if the file stamp, so this means you can upload newer versions of the same application as long as you keep the name the same. And so if you've updated the application, it will check the file stamp on the local device and the file stamp here. If they are the same, it won't download the latest version. If they're different, if this is newer, it will automatically download the latest version of the simulation. So that allows you to distribute for launcher-based applications, put them anywhere else. So actually the only thing that's going on Google Play is this bit here. And it keeps it all clean and tidy and allows you to deploy multiple textures to people all over the world. So that is, I'm just going to close that and that. This is the Android Launcher Web Download. So that's that one. The next one we're going to do is standalone. Now standalone has a lot more options, and I'll cover sort of the basics of these. Okay, so when you use standalone, there is no need for a launcher. It is a native Android application, just the same as Angry Birds or anything else you would download to your Android device. There are standard parameters, so accelerometer, virtual D-pad, what the texture format, the quality, force texture override. So it's very much similar to the other ones. And there are two real sections to this. The first is the first two lines here, and the second is these lines here. So let's go through them. The app name is the app name as it appears on the device itself. So if I've called my rifle demo, when I download this and put it on Google Play and download it to my device, it will say rifle demo. There is a version name. This version name is purely used by Google Play. It's not used by the device itself. It will just show up on the Google Play lists. There's a version code, increments from 1 up to infinity. We've not tested that. Said how far. That's very important, because if you have one version that they call version 1 and you try to upload a new version and you've called it, still haven't changed this, it's still version 1, Google Play won't let you upload. The signing key, the password and the alias are all to do with signing the certificate and signing the authorization that this is your application. I'm not going to go into detail, and we haven't got time on this webinar, but on VBSWorlds.com you can find documents that will take you through what these are. Effectively, all you need to do really is put a password in and an alias, and leave the rest to VBSWorlds. If you want to know the internals and all the bits and bobs that go with it, please go to VBSWorlds.com and download the information. So I won't have time to cover it here. The last thing is the icon. So the icon that will appear on the Android desktop. It can be any PNG or JPEG or supported graphics file. Please make it square. So if you don't make it square, we will make it square on the download process, and it will squash, so have square ones. The last option for publishing is the standalone with web download. That is much the same, but it works very much like the launcher download, where you get an XML file, a launcher file, but the individual data files are hosted in some other place. Now the reason we built this was for Google Play puts a 50 meg limit on applications. Therefore, a lot of VBSWorlds sims are greater than 50, and certainly I don't size this gun one will be getting there. It's because of the quality of the graphics. So by hosting your data files externally from Google Play, but putting the main app on Google Play, effectively it will download to the sim but go and get its data from somewhere else. So get the actual app data from somewhere else. What that means is that you can have your mobile sim as big as you like. You still have the concern that they might be too big for the device, but it circumnavigates the problem of Google Play putting a 50 meg limit on the size of the simulation. So all of this that I've covered in the last 5-10 minutes is on VBSWorlds.com in the documentation. Please have a read. If you've got any questions at all, drop us an email at VBS support lines and we'll get back to you. Now the next thing we're going to do is, okay, Kurt, you've asked the question, are any other mobile controls options like standard actions going to be added for specific mobile publishing? Yes, they are, but they are, Kurt, so we're about to release 1.4, which has the orbit camera and the pinch and the swivel. That's our first one. There are a whole host of things that we'd like to add. They're going to be on the roadmap. Our aim is to have at least 2 more of those available and usable for the next version of VBSWorlds in time for IETSEC. So by IETSEC, we'll have a couple of more mobile-specific controls. Some nice UI elements. Are these included in the default install? No, they're not, but if anybody would like the UI elements, drop me an email and I'll put them online because I created them myself. They're quite easy. Okay. One question. Okay. We'll come back to that. Bruce, you've logged off, so we'll come back to your question later. So you've got. Okay, so what we're going to do now is to bring back my there we go. So what we're going to do is export and put the file in here. I'm going to connect my Android device, then we're going to see it working on the Android device itself. So minimize that. What we said we would do was do it for Android launcher. It's going to be DDS, no virtual D-pad, force texture overwrite, and we'll have a reasonable quality. And I'll hit the button. That shouldn't take too long, it's DDS. While that's doing, I'll just get the Android device itself. Okay, when you have finished your publishing, it will give you, I've got this missing texture, it keeps turning out, but it will actually say your export successful, exported size was, etc., etc. It gives you some base information. And in my folder, rifledemo.pack, so that's what we've called it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to close VBSWorlds now. Move that along there. I'm about to plug in my tablet. Boom, boom. And it should come up and say open device to use files. Now, normally on an Android device, we have found some differences, but a pretty good place to start. And if you get stuck with a particular device, get in touch. Internal storage, Android, data, Caspian Droid. Now the Caspian Droid folder is automatically created when you download the launcher from Google Play. So download and install the launcher from Google Play and it will create this folder. You can see there's some files already in there, so all I'm going to do is run that across there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I have to keep my headphones on. I'm going to close this and this. I'm going to start this little webcam app. Okay, just there is the launcher. At the bottom of the launcher screen, you should be able to see Rifle Demo, 3D M240 training sim, start button. There we go. There's the show come up, and then if I hide them, see if I can work the buttons with this other hand here. Ooh. That was quite clever, wasn't it? Like that, and then that finger and go in, and hopefully we can zoom this. There's the information. And, I can move. This is a horrible demo, and I do apologise for the lo-fi quality of this. But you can see me moving my finger and the camera moving around, spinning around, and I should be able to pinch, go out, and pinch, and come in and turn. That roughly is the how the app works. So there's the app and sort of open and doing things. I hope you found that useful as well. And it is very easy to put a mobile sim together, put it and just hook up your Android device. Even under the pressure of putting it on webcam, it took us about 40 minutes really to build a very small app, but it's a good virtual training app. Okay guys, there's been no more questions. Thank you for your kind comments. I'm going to stop the recording and close the webinar. I wish you all a good day and hope you join in for the next webinar, which we'll be doing next month at some point. Bye bye now.